So I'm kind of like, there was something there's always something that we're saying like right before we go live, and like I sensed there was some import. But I'm so excited to have you here with me. Do you guys ever have people in your life where just you find that you are orbiting each other and orbiting, and it's like you just show up again and again and again, and you don't always know why, and then there's like some alignment that happens. That's like the way the intuitive process in the universe works. It's not always that direct line that we would like to see. But then when
intensely everything feminine too, that intuitive process,
yes.
Right? Like the straight, clean lines and the, A to B, that's very, what would you call that, yang energy?
Yes.
Where the flow is the more yin. Yeah.
But then there's, when the yin working its magic, invisible behind the scenes, and then there is that moment where it's like, brrr. Now that's why we've been orbiting each other for how many years? I don't even know. It's been years. Like you show up there, I see you there. It's like we're in Koya together, and then
I found when I was putting out to my own friends and family on Facebook that, hey guys, guess what? I'm going to be with one of my teachers this morning, and I was like writing a list of, she's my teacher, she's my Koya sister, she's my friend, she's my, and I'm like, well, look at all these intersections.
Yeah. And so, part of what we're starting to open up to, like in my practice, we're always talking about, like I had another session on alignment, not last Friday, the Friday before, and we were talking about alignment with nature, right? So the alignment with nature and her beautiful transition of seasons and everything that Earth is about. But the truth is, that's just one tiny piece of the bigger puzzle, because Earth is one planet in our solar system. So all of those interconnections, knowing how centered we are and our connection with all those earthly things, that we're also very much connected with all those planetary alignments, all the alignment of stars. When you think about, Tara had asked me, and I'm going to turn it over to you in a moment, when the moment that we choose to be born is no accident. So, there's a certain season, there's a certain month, there's a certain year, there's a certain time, there's a certain alignment of everything on the planet that you chose. Not just even you chose all your parents and all that, but also you chose that astral alignment because, like, that's a reflection of who you are in that moment when you choose to come to planet Earth. So that's the side of things that you can speak to, which I'm so excited to explore with you today.
I love all that. I could speak about a person's natal chart sort of all day, every day, and that's my intention to do that in the world. But what I really love and what really gets me super excited is how it intersects with everything else too. It intersects with what you say, the invisible, right? So we don't necessarily see the alignment of the planets when we look up in the night sky, but it's there. And it can be a guide for us. Now, in saying that, I don't believe that astrology as a modality is fated or it's not a religion either. It's a guide. It's a tool to help us know ourselves. Yes. And as I have explained to friends in the past, to me, astrology is simply one of the greatest modalities for us to accept ourselves with as little judgment as possible, right? Okay, yes, I am, in Melissa's case, a Leo, but I don't like how fierce my temper can be sometimes. When we sort of understand the metaphorical language of being a Leo, and we're never just that one thing. We're never just a Leo because we don't just have Earth in our galaxy, in our point in time and space. We don't have just that. Most tangibly, we understand that our galaxy has influence on us because we know what the moon does to this planet.
Right.
The Earth is what percentage water? More than 7?
It's around 70%. It's the same percentage
I was
water.
Going to say, is that not the same percentage of water that we have in human bodies? And we know that the moon controls the tides. Mm-hmm. We know that the moon moves the bodies of water on this planet. If it can move the bodies of water, and we ourselves are bodies of water, how can that not affect us?
Well, even when I was in residency, you know, everybody knew, oh God, it's a full moon.
Yeah.
And I remember even going back to med school, being on the psych ward. And they're like, oh God, it's a full moon. You know, it's like, even the medical doctors are like, there's a thing here. There's a correlation between something rising up and surging and impacting. Well, it connects.
And for me, we're just being on the moon, because I love her. Mm-hmm. La Luna. And in
I have some more pictures up there.
There she is, right behind us. And in my shamanic lineage that I study and train in, the moon is referred to as Mama Kia, which is grandmother. And it just makes my heart swell to think of grandmother. And that's the relationship I have with her. I go out and talk to her on a regular basis.
Oh, absolutely.
And but I guess further to the moon is that I choose not to work on Mondays, because Monday is actually the moon's day. Ooh. And it's interesting that this past Monday was a full moon. We had the full moon in Pisces, a very intense full moon astrologically, energetically, because it was at the 28th degree of Pisces. Now, each sign has 30 degrees because they're plotted into a circle, a 360-degree circle, so each sign has 30 degrees. The 0, 1, 28, and 29 degrees of any sign are what are considered critical degrees, because they're the very, very beginning and the very, very end.
Okay.
And Pisces is the very, very end of the zodiac. So it moves in a spiral, which I saw that there was a spiral when I walked in your door this morning.
There's spirals everywhere here. Yeah.
Oh, look at the spiral. We have, the spiral in the zodiac too, right? Because time, as we know, doesn't happen linearly. It actually happens. Quantum physics tells us it happens in a spiral. And so when we look at the astrological chart, we look at it in a flat sort of circle, but really what we should do is flip it like this. So we look at it dead on like a circle, but we should flip it like this, because it goes like that. And I love full moon, right? So this seasonality, right? So each sign has a season, and we circle through them, we spiral through them each year. So when we get to the end of Pisces, we're done with the zodiac, right? So we have traveled through all the stories, all the lessons and opportunities that present to us, and I wanted to post last week that I think astrology has possibly hit peak mainstream at the moment. One of the world's sort of most recognized astrologers, Susan Miller, just had a natal chart themed trunk done for Louis Vuitton to celebrate the 200th anniversary of his birth.
Wow.
And they invited her and like 200 or 300 other artists around the world to create and design a trunk in tribute to him, to the founder of this great fashion house, this great aspirational brand and entity that we have in the capitalist world. And the trunk that she created was a 2-scale model of his natal chart.
Oh, how cool.
And it was on display in 400 Louis Vuitton stores around the world on the weekend, but not in Indianapolis. We didn't get it for whatever reason.
I think it's really interesting for you to say that, because I feel like part of what we're experiencing over the past 2 years, it's been more than the past 2 years, it's just the intensity of all the shifts that are showing up on the planet. And the intensity is calling us to wake up and make some changes. And we're actually...
I think the planet is calling us.
The planet is calling us. And she is telling us, like, we need to go to this ancient wisdom. We need to tap into the messages that are in the alignment of the stars. Like, we're not going to figure it out the way we've been trying to figure out life, because we're destroying ourselves and creating chaos and madness. So that feels like, that... seeing that reflection, the popularity, more people seeking things that are holistic and integrative, that's it's beautiful. It's such a good sign, that people are ready to receive.
And like astrology was psychology before we had psychology, and the father of modern psychology, Jung, has a whole book on psychology and astrology, so it's been with us. It's as old as traditional Chinese medicine, as old as traditional Tibetan medicine or Ayurveda. It's a way for us to understand our place in the world that's been around for 5,000 years. Yeah. Now, my professional background is I have a degree in communication. So the professional communicator in me loves astrology because of the metaphorical language and all the parallels that can be drawn and all the relationships that have the opportunity to exist for us between our one, you are not a drop in the ocean, you are the ocean in a drop, between our sort of beingness like that as a part of nature, and these more ancient traditions and modalities. There were shamans before there were doctors, and there are probably still on the planet more shamans than there are medical doctors, and so for me and my eclectic mix of things, they all intersect, they all work quite harmoniously together. The astrology makes the universal invisible visible to us. In my practice and study and love of shamanism makes the invisible in the natural world visible to us. And I love how those two interests of mine intersect with the study that I'm currently doing with you as part of The Healer Lies Within, and learning more about the 5-element philosophy and starting to practice Qigong, is because in shamanic healing, we know that the healing, not the cure, happens in the level of the invisible, right? And we call that level of the invisible, or the one that we work in when we, actively working in shamanic healing, the luminous energy field. And if we had loads of time today, I would say, can we do some shaman magic for everyone and show how...
Maybe you'll come back.
Yeah, and show how, yes, it's woo, but it lands in the physical. The invisible becomes landing in the physical.
I love that you even said woo, because, woo, 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 woo. So the lineage, you may or may not know, of our practice in Dragon's Might Qigong is, yeah. And I know it's not pronounced like that. If you pronounce it in traditional Chinese, it's woo, but it's W-U. So yeah, I love the woo woo. Oh. And it means to live from heart space, to move into that intuitive and invisible connection of things.
Just to jam on that and get super excited about No Wonder I'm Here studying with you, is the lineage of shamanism that I study in is Peruvian. It's from the Andes, from the Sacred Valley, with the Caro elders, which are the descendants of the Inca, that when the conquistadors came in, they escaped to the Andes at very, very high elevations. They only came down to modern life, I think, in the 60s. So they've only recently started to reintegrate and to sort of spread their view and their teachings and their traditional practices to be shared around the world. And one of the ideals, values that we hold in shamanism is the idea of Aini, which is right relationship. It's a form of love that is about right relationship. And most directly, it's translated as reciprocity. But what it really means is right relationship and that idea of living in balance. Right? So...
So speak to your relationship, because you were mentioning that before we started. Yes. There's something significant about today in particular.
Yeah. So yesterday we started Libra season. So Libra is the 10th sign of the zodiac. It's represented by the scales. So Libra is a season of, it is a sign that is very, very concerned with harmony and with balance. It is ruled by the planet Venus, and it is the sign of partnerships, right? So yes, this includes our romantic partnerships, but any relationship where we're experiencing balance. So yeah, harmony, balance, relationship are all things to think about, to hold at front of mind, and how we're interacting in our world in those ways during Libra season. And today, numerologically, is a 2 universal day. Now, 2 in numerology is the number of partnerships. And last year we were in 2020, so we had the 2 repeated through the whole year. So last year, there was some focus for many of us, if we were aware, on partnerships. And next year we're entering into a 22, which in numerology we don't reduce the 11, the 22. Any number that's repeated, we don't reduce it to its singular.
Okay.
So next year we have the 22, which is like in its most simple explanation in numerology, a master number, which is the 11, the 22, the 33, the 34, any singular number that's repeated. How do you interpret that? What does that mean? Well, we take all of the lessons of the singular number and we double it. So it's an intensification.
Okay.
Right?
So a big focus on relationship, connection, balance.
Yes. Yeah, a big one too. And if we look at the numerology of what's coming in that year, next year, it's 2022. So it's a 2 with a 0, and then the master 22. Now, when we think in numerology, we think 1 to 9, but we don't exclude the 0. So we'll never have a life path that's 0, or a challenge number or a destiny number that's 0. But when the 0 shows up, it's an amplifier. So we have the 2 amplified by the 0, and then we have the master 22. So
wow,
it already feels like, oh gosh, it's a lot. And man, do we really need a third year of a lot? Apparently
we do.
Apparently
we do. There's so much that's bubbling up in me. One thing in the Bakwa numerology that I've been trained in, the number 2 is correlates with our large intestine and our lungs. So, which is the season that we're moving into, that season and element of metal. And this element is about turning inward, looking at what we need to process and work on so that we can let it go. Because metal is about shining the truth of who we are into the world, valuing ourselves. So, yeah, and so knowing what you're saying too, in relationship, we think about relationship as a mirror. And any relationship, whether it's your relationship with yourself, your children, your parents, your partner, your work, nature, it's a mirror for you to see yourself. You want to clean that mirror up as much as you can, because it's going to be showing you where you need to be focused. So not only you can do your own inner work, but you can work on that connection and relationship. The other piece that was coming up, I had the pleasure of supporting one of my Chi sisters last night, as it was a work-life balance workshop that she was doing, and she was using these ways of speaking. She was talking about balance, so like that Libra way of balance, but you immediately dropped into the word harmony. Balance and harmony are different things, right? I mean, because balance is like, but harmony is, there's this wholeness. There's like something centered in connection, where there's this fluid dance that's happening, and it's not like, oh, I'm here, and that's, there, and it's like I'm pulling in here, and I'm not giving enough there in relationships. So to think of harmony, she actually shifted the image from the scale to like a wheel. And you're at the hub. So I'm pointing to the natal chart, which of course it looks like a beautiful wheel with you at the, I mean, that's not that representation, but the concept is when you're at the center.
It is, and that's exactly.
It is me.
That is exactly how I describe it when I sit with people with their charts. I'm like, before I tell you how to suck eggs, let me tell you how to view the chart. This circle that's cut into like 12 pie slices, and it's got all these symbols and lines, and what is all of that? Well, firstly, it's you. You know, and literally with the software that I use to work with to cast charts, as they say, there's an X in the very, very center of the circle. And that's you, looking out into the cosmos the moment you drew your first breath. And that's you. So, yeah, it is. So, you know, when we think about the zodiac, we think about what's your sign. When I remind people, like, you know, hey baby, what's your sign?
Oh, that's such a big thing right now. I hear my kids talking about. Yeah. I don't want to date someone because they're this sign or they're
you'll love this. Just on, I don't know the age of your children. I know you have a wee one. But
16 to 5.
Okay. Well, for the 16-year-old, having the mother that she has, when I look at compatibility from an astrological point of view, people talk about, oh, this sign doesn't go with that sign. Yeah. Let's look at the elements. You know, so it's not so much, to me, it's not so much compatibility lies in the characteristics of the sign, because you can come the more constructive or challenging aspects of any sign that you have, and we have all signs to some extent within us, but it's about the elements, and do the elements, are they complementary, right? And that doesn't mean that if the elements are not complementary, that, oh, forget it, it'll never work. Right. But it's the awareness of, there's more work to do here. If this is what you really, really want, if this is what your heart is calling you, if this is the partnership your heart is calling you to be into, and you're fire and they are water, guess what? Water puts out fire. Creates the balance. So you're going to, you know, whereas fire and air, you know, air, we need oxygen to fuel the fire, right? So that works, but there's always and I never say good and bad with astrology, ever. And I used to say shadow and light, because that, I feel that. I feel resonance with that, but I'm like, even that implies a little bit of judgment, like shadow's bad. Except no, there's a lot of gifts for us in the shadow, right? Where do we plant seeds? Deep in the darkness, right?
Well, that speaks to what, you know, I've been talking about all week with the equinox, the meaning of the shadow and the light. The invisible and the visible. There's just, you know, the divine masculine, the divine feminine, however you want, yin yang, however you want to look at it. One can't exist without the other.
And so I've moved from that language just to constructive and challenging.
Yes.
Right? It's like, oh.
And challenging can be very constructive.
Yes, right. So for me, that's where I look when I look to compatibility with partnerships. And, you know, there's a lot of things that people, you know, bring to the table when they want to understand themselves. And often, you know, the romantic relationships, the interpersonal relationships come. You know, we are a species that are actually, you know, we thrive in interdependence. Now, we find ourselves in a culture that is the culture of the individual, you know, American independence. So, you know, but really in practice, and this is the beautiful thing about learning and practicing in other cultures, like TCM, like Chinese medicine, even in shamanisms, where, you know, the shamans in South America that still live in the jungle or still live up in the Sacred Valley, they may live separate to society, but they live in tribes, you know, and have you traveled to China? Please forgive me if that's the dumbest question you've ever been asked.
No, I've never traveled to China.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. In 2012, I had the opportunity to go to China.
Oh, wow. You mean, you're the dragon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, of course.
Yes. I traveled to China with my ex-husband to visit friends of ours that had moved to Shanghai. And when we were planning our trip, and China was never anywhere I had thought about going before, because it's the antithesis of America. Why would I go there? I'd rather go to a beach or someplace European. How colonizer of me to say that part of my language. But you know, I don't think that most people think about vacationing to China, and so they were sharing with us Well, you have to go to Beijing because you have to see the Forbidden City, and you have to go see the wall, and you have to go see Xi'an, the terracotta warriors, right? And they said all these things like, if you don't go experience these parts of China, it would be like going to Egypt and not seeing the pyramids. Mm-hmm. And so what was just going to be a quick holiday to pop over, I was living in Australia at the time, so an 8-hour flight is popping over.
Okay.
Right? An 8-hour flight to pop over and see our friends in Shanghai. Turned into, I think, a week or 10 days we were there, and we went to Beijing, and we saw the Forbidden City, and we, as Westerners, of course, we were naturally curious about Tiananmen Square. And the experience of being Westerners in Tiananmen Square was kind of wild, because in domestic China, that was an incident that just didn't happen. Right? Didn't happen, and so you got to sort of experience all this cultural beauty and history and almost pilgrimage, not almost, actual pilgrimage for the regional Chinese to come in and go to the Forbidden City and be in the square, and Mao's tomb is there and everything. And they're standing there as these very white Westerners. My ex-husband at the time was 6'2", 6'3", and the Chinese physiology is they're not large people, and so there are lots of people in their provincial, traditional costumes. They're on their pilgrimage to the capital, looking at this giant white man, and as much as they were looking on at him with curiosity, the secret police were just right there. Tangent, sorry. But
pull it to the essence, babe. You got it.
Is the communal living.
Communal living, yeah.
Right? And the Forbidden City, you see how, and in some areas, particularly in like I can't remember what to call them, like the slums of modern China, they still live like that.
Yeah.
They still center these extended families around a courtyard, and they still live like that.
And I think that's where I want to close. Here we are, we've been talking about connection in different ways. And that's another piece that feels so important. It's what I spoke about last week, that with the weavers that know their web, that we need to make these conscious connections to each other in our own communities and beyond, that it's really essential for those of us that are trying to pull in to this alignment during these times of chaos. It's absolutely essential, that interdependence, and that's part of what the universe is calling us to as well, to that oneness that we are. Yeah. Oh, this is awesome. We could go on and on.
We really could.
I also just want to say, it's like they're, speaking relationship connections. So we've aligned a very special immersive workshop that begins next Saturday that is all about relationship. And it's not just about couples, right? That's an extension. When we speak about you're the one at the center of your experience and connection to all that is. Your connection with the stars, your connection with planet Earth, your connection with other people, your connection with your work, your connection with yourself is at the center of all of that. So through this immersive workshop, there are multiple beautiful guides that will be present, supporting you, looking at all these different angles. So you'll be opening up to concept, but also very much experiential energy work, movement, meditation. So that I'll put some details in the comments
part of that's
below.
Happening at the Baker Farmhouse.
Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah, I finally pulled some of the pictures of our event off my daughter's camera because she wasn't going to do that for me. And it was like, oh my gosh, it feels like we were just there. So we're preparing a beautiful big barn. So it's going to be open on both sides. So we'll be able to gather twice together in person. Depending on the weather, be able to go inside, outside, bonfires, the works. And then 2 of the events in between will be virtual on Zoom.
How wonderful.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I no doubt we'll find something else to chat about another time. Sure. Enjoy your weekend, everybody.